Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
What's up, everybody? This is your co-host, Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average podcast-producing badass.
I'm John Thomas. Some would say that I go a little too far with my love of all things horror, paranormal, and meta, but I say, talk nerdy to me, and I'm all yours.
I'm BJ Sewura, an aspiring paranormal musician who plays live for the dead because the living just doesn't want to hear me.
The Dead of Winter Horror Network and Nick Kane from the 508 Productions invite you to endure the most terrifying immersive experience in all of podcasting. Beneath the Red Umbrella, now available wherever you listen to podcasts. Beneath the Red Umbrella, when the snow falls, the killing season begins.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our horror movie lovers out there? In today's episode, we'll be discussing horror favorites and filmmaking with our special guests, PJ and Ashes from Magenta Manor Productions and Dead of Winter Entertainment. Welcome to the show, PJ and Ashes.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. We're so excited to be here. We are shivering in anticipation.
That is actually one of my favorite memes to send people.
It's solid.
You got to send half of it, and then you wait a few minutes, and then you send the other half.
Well, I usually I type out the antissa, and then I wait a moment and send the image with the patient.
There you go. There you go.
Solid. I like that.
Yeah. It's just, I have way too much fun with that. And for those listeners that don't know, that is from Rocky Horror. And if you don't know, shame on you.
You better find out.
Tim Curry at his finest.
Oh, one of the greatest
Yeah.
reveals in cinema history.
Oh, it's one of my favorite films. I could talk about that all day.
Oh, yeah. We are definitely Rocky Horror lovers over here.
Mhm.
So
Oh yeah.
Do you guys shadowcast at all?
I saw it for the first time.
I've been to one.
Yeah.
Maybe twice. No, I think I've been once, and that was so much fun.
Mm.
I want to go more.
I do too. I went once. That was fun. I went with my daughter, actually. It was really great.
We've been to a few.
It's fun for the whole family.
Except Grandma and Grandpa.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, they like to do the time warp too,
Who doesn't like the time warp?
But yeah, we've been to numerous ones. In college, I was actually in a shadow cast. I was Magenta. So yeah, it's a love affair, really.
That's super cool. I saw it for the first time just last year. So I was, what are they? They called me a super virgin.
Yes.
Super virgin here.
Yeah.
You're a 40-year-old virgin.
I was. No, it was my birthday too. It was my 40th birthday. So I was
That's
literally
hilarious.
a 40-year-old virgin that night. And they popped my cherry hard. It was crazy.
I bet they did.
They put lipstick all over me and,
Yep.
made me slap some asses, and it was good.
Made you?
Well, I got a t-shirt out of it.
I mean, that's a bonus right there.
Oh yeah.
Right. Now, Ashes and PJ, you guys have the Throwdown Thursday podcast, right?
Yes.
What is Throwdown Thursday about?
So Throwdown Thursday is a bi-weekly podcast where we talk about characters the same way some podcasts do film reviews. And we talk about a plethora of characters. So we're not just horror, but we are very enthusiastic about our horror characters. We delve into the history of these characters, their contributions to pop culture. So like say for comic book characters, sometime we delve into the history of the character before a big film comes out. So say you haven't had a time to read any of those comic books or anything, we'll kind of give you a little peek behind the curtain, so to speak, educate you. And that way you can go into these films knowing a little bit. And if you happen to see something that the hardcore comic book fans know about, you'll also know about that too. And you can kind of join in on the fun. So yeah, we do all that. We talk about wine, science. We have character battles. It's a good time.
That is such an awesome concept. So out of all of the throwdowns that you guys have done, which would you say are your tops, like your favorites?
We had 340 something episodes, so that's tough to narrow down.
I figured I was going to
Wow.
make it difficult.
I would say when Infinity War was coming out, we had a bunch of people on. We called it Thanos, the Hands of Fate. We did a 2-parter, and that was a lot of fun. We did a lot of predictions and talked about the history, like the actual comic that it drew its inspiration from. We've had some great guests on. We've interviewed Dee Wallace. We've interviewed Samantha Newark, who was Jem. We had the Terrifier guys on. We've interviewed people at cons. We've gotten the chance to talk to, Meg Foster and Julian Glover, and we got a Tim Curry response on there once. Malcolm McDowell.
Oh, that's cool.
Like, I don't know. It's hard to say like what our favorite is. I think some of the cons that we did where we were just walking around talking to people, because we would come up with a con question that we would just ask any random person that we saw, like, who's on your Mount Rushmore of horror, or who's your favorite female horror villain, different things like that. Who's your favorite Universal monster?
Those are great. I mean, that's all great ideas. And, don't be surprised if you see me going to conventions and be like, hey, what's your favorite vampire?
No, I mean,
no, do it.
There's one question I always ask, and people always seem to like it, especially at cons. And we started asking this, like 5 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
And you get some really good responses. And the question is, you're here at a convention, people are spending their time and their money. Some people have driven, hours and hundreds of miles and spent thousands of dollars to meet you. Who is somebody that you would have done that exact same thing to meet? And I've gotten to ask that question to a lot of different people. Some people have to think about it. Some people know right off the bat. And it's always great. Everybody always loves that question. Like I interviewed one of the WWF guys a few years ago. And you could tell he really didn't want to talk to me at first, but I asked him that question and he starts thinking about it, and it brings him back to these memories where he's like, yeah, I remember being in Toronto and waiting in line for hours at a car dealership to meet Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And then years later I ended up working with him, and like, he remembered me, and like, it was so cool. Like, so after thinking about that and reliving that memory, he was in like such a much better mood. He's like, thanks for that question. Like, that was great. Like, I think
That's so awesome.
Well, I think people are used to getting the same questions over and over. Like when we interviewed Dee Wallace, we didn't talk about E.T. or Cujo. We talked about, her TED Talks and like all the other stuff that she's done, because she's answered a million questions about E.T. and Cujo.
Yeah, one of my most surreal memories you just made me think of is a client and I were, because you guys know I work at conventions, and a client and I were in one of the break rooms, and he and I are just geeking out on wine. Like you mentioned, wine, Ashes. We are just in it. Like, like kids would be over Pokemon cards, or we're leaning over the table just talking about our favorite wines and what we like about it. And we hear someone come up and say, you're talking about what? I like wine. Can I sit with you guys? And we both look up, and I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. And, poker face. I'm like, poker face. Yes, you may sit with us, Sam Raimi. And it's like, what in the world? and we play it off. Like, we just sit there and we go on for a while. He didn't want to leave because he wants to talk about gardening, and like he grows his own vegetables and like fruit trees and wine. And his agent comes over and is like, we gotta go, Sam. We have photo ops. And he's like, I'm sorry, guys, I gotta go, but let's talk later. And I'm like, yes, let's. And he gets up, leaves. My client turns to me and is like, did that really just happen?
That's amazing.
Yeah, so note to self, Sam Raimi likes wine.
If you walk up to Sam Raimi and ask him about his garden and his plants, like be prepared to talk about, like, he will tell you like what you should, and he'll look it up, like, what area are you in, and he'll look it up and tell you what you should grow in your yard. And yeah, he's very
amazing.
passionate about that,
I love
which you
that.
never would have guessed, right?
Yeah, no, I love that. Sometimes I think we forget that these, celebrities, so to speak, are people too, and they have hobbies and real lives and personal lives, and they like to do things that we like to do. They like to watch anime and garden and drink wine. Like it just baffles me sometimes that we forget that.
And certain people, like, you're talking with Sam Raimi with the wine, like there are certain people you would never guess are into the things that they're into. Like I read Kane Hodder's biography and realized he was, big into cartography. Like that's what his degree is cartography. Because if he hadn't gotten into stunts, he would have made maps. So at one of the last Rockin' Shocks, I gave him a map of the moon from a replica map from, the 1800s. And he immediately started like poring over it and like, oh my God, like, look at that. Like, that's so cool. And like, look at this. And like, it's like, he likes maps, like not what I would have expected.
Especially from Jason Voorhees.
Right? I mean, it would make sense he likes maps.
Yeah, I find that so one of my jobs, I drive celebrities around when they come to Denver, and same thing. Like I find the most interesting conversations are the ones that aren't about horror, that are just about everyday things, right? For me, it was Christina Ricci. When I drove her around, I was talking to her about how my friend he works on like vans, how people convert their buses into vans and stuff. And she was talking to me how she wanted to do that, like her husband wants to do that because he's from England, and they wanted to do a trip around America, just live in the van life for like a little while. I was like, oh yes, you should absolutely do that. That'd be so cool. Just talking about the different kinds of vehicles that they would use. It's super fun.
Yeah, it's always interesting delving outside of the norm, and I think that's what those folks like to talk about. It's like, it's like, oh, I loved you in this movie, I loved you in that movie. Like, oh, what was it like working with this guy? Like, those are the same questions they're going to get over and over and over again.
It's also like, you being asked about your job. It's like, I don't want to talk about my job. I want to talk about, other things, the things that bring me joy. Not saying that their jobs and being on set and stuff doesn't bring them joy, because obviously, I mean, I know it brings me joy. But, when you're asked the same questions over and over again, sometimes it's just nice when somebody takes, like a personal interest in you.
Yeah.
Ashes, I love your voice, by the way. I could just listen to you talk all day.
Thank you.
We've been told that before. Like we used to do a sports show, and we had one of the local radio guys on, and she started talking. He's like, "That's who should be introducing everything. That's your voice." So, oh yeah, we know.
She's got an epic voice. I sidetracked myself. I was going somewhere, but I'm just like, gosh, I love her voice.
I keep joking that I'm going to start an OnlyFans, but it's not what you think. It's just going to be me sitting there in a nice, like, ambiently lit room reading like Anne Rice novels.
Dressed all gothy and spooky.
Yeah, fully clothed, but
Do
dressed
it.
nice,
I see 3 subscribers already. One of the other questions I found gets people really chatty, not even questions, topics that gets people chatty at conventions, is when they figure out we've got a podcast that talks about paranormal and extraterrestrial. How many people go from being quiet and like, oh, I'm just kind of going to stick to myself, to, I have a ghost story. Can I tell you a ghost story? And it's just like, sure. And the guys laugh because that will happen to be on planes too. Like where someone's like, I had a demonic experience. Can I tell you about it? And like, what? Sure, why not?
Paranormal version of somebody finding out you're a doctor and they're like, hey, can you look at this? Does this mole look suspicious to you?
It's true.
A raisin. It's a raisin. You're fine.
It's a raisin. Yeah, exactly. So it's fun, but the ones I always think are even more exciting are the ones that are like, I've had alien experiences. Can I tell you about that? And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, please. I wish I could record you right now.
I love me some
Um,
aliens. Don't get me started on that.
Now, with that said, do you guys have any paranormal or extraterrestrial experiences?
So I have, there's a history of this in my family where, my uncle, when he was younger, like a baby, there was, a relative who had never met him, who would be frequently seen in his room, picking him up or moving his blankets. When my dad's best friend died, he was leaving the house. He opened the door, saw him standing in the hallway. When I was 3 or 4, I don't remember exactly, but I was in my room, and my room was on the second floor. And outside of my window, someone called my name, and I will never forget the sound. It almost sounded like an old person underwater.
Mm.
And it didn't terrify me so much as, like, I guess the right word would be it thrilled or exhilarated me. Like, I wasn't afraid, but like I was ready to fight or flight type thing. So I went to the living room, asked my mom, "You calling me?" Nope. Go into the other room where my dad's with my brother, who's 1.5, 2. Are you calling me? No. Well, somebody's calling me, and they're right outside my window. Never heard it since. Years later, I've always been a big like UFO person. Always loved it. Always been my thing. I'm sitting on the couch. My dad's on the other couch, and we're watching a show called UFOs Are Real. And all of a sudden, a gray alien pops up on the screen. I have never been more terrified before or since. I fell off the couch, like my entire body. It's like I had banged my funny bone. It was like throughout my entire body. I managed to crawl out of the room because I was so terrified of the image on the screen. And I don't know why, because I would read all the books, I'd watch all the shows. Nothing bothered me. But that, for whatever reason, that one specific thing bothered me so much, and I've never forgotten it.
So I told him once, this was after we had been together, living together for a while, that I'm like, so sometimes it feels like something is watching me while I sleep, but not necessarily me. Like it's not, but it feels like it's not interested in me per se. It just happens to be in the room, like not like a physical entity though, but like something is in the room. But however, when he's not home, like if he's, on set or whatever, doing something, like he's not here for the night, I don't feel it at all. And he told me, he's like, oh, I feel that way sometimes too. Like there's something watching me, like in my
hairs
sleep.
are up on my arm. Like, I'm not even kidding.
What time of day is that? Does that happen usually? Does that happen at a certain time of day, or is it something that's?
It's usually
at night.
Random?
It's at night. Like
I
really
have had sleep paralysis before too.
Yeah, like really early in the morning, usually around like 3 o'clock. 4 a.m.
Between 3 and 4.
Ooh.
Like, so I try not to, if I have to, like, if I wake up because I have to go to the bathroom, I usually be like, well, girl, you're going to hold it for another hour because we're not opening our eyes right now. We're
I
not
can't
doing
tell you
that.
how many times
We're not getting up.
I am 100% sure when I open my eyes, something's going to be there. It doesn't help that, like, you have a coat hanging on the door and it always looks like someone's standing there. But, like, there's definitely like it's a weird vibe, and like I said, I've been awake and completely paralyzed, can't even speak. Like she's next to me, and I'm trying to do everything just to move or speak or something. I don't get nightmares that I remember, anyways. But like I've woken her up by screaming no before, and I did smack you in the face.
Yeah,
once.
You were like hands one night too, so that was fun.
And I don't recall anything that led up to it, but like, I've had those instances of I can't move and I'm trying everything, and then all of a sudden, like, I can sit up and I can move, and it's just like, okay, all right, I guess I'll sleep in a week or so, because
Do you like with the feeling that someone's watching you, has it only been in that house, or has that been something you felt like growing
Oh,
up?
all
Like,
through
when did
my
you
life.
first
Yes.
notice it?
So we've
All
lived
through
in
it.
this is our second apartment together, and like I felt it in our previous apartment.
Oh yeah, I've always
Like,
I have a hard time sleeping when she's not here. Like if she's staying at her mom's house or whatever's going on, like it's a weird feeling. Like I have a hard time, but so it's like, well, I got the cat with me. Like she would notice if there was something. So as long as the cat doesn't act weird, like everything should be fine. Like I'm relying on my 8-pound cat to protect me from the Zeta
You got to make those
Reticuli.
deals.
My dogs don't warn me for anything. Like, I experience so much, and they're just like, they turn around and snore. Like, they don't care.
Yeah, the cats care even less. Like if you're dead, who's gonna feed me? Am I gonna have to wait till she gets home?
Yeah.
I'll just eat your face. Whatever.
Have you guys ever thought about talking to a psychic or somebody or a medium or somebody who channels and all that to see what the deal is with you?
We went to a medium, like I went with her because she wanted to go. Like we went to a medium in Salem.
I was with a group of friends. They wanted to do the whole group thing. Now I've been wanting to see a medium for a while, but just haven't. I guess I should say haven't mustered up the courage to do so quite yet. But they wanted to do the whole group thing, and it's like, you aren't guaranteed a reading when you do the whole if you're in a group setting, but you might get something. So but that's not really, they didn't say anything about like that stuff though.
No, but apparently, like I was like, yeah, okay, a medium. Mm-hmm. Like I am a firm believer in the paranormal, but the people who do it for money, I take it with several teaspoons of salt. But like I'm sitting there, I'm like, yep, all right. Let's see you cold read the room, John Edward. Let's see what we got. And she starts talking. She's like, oh, there's someone here for you. I'm like, me? The fuck? What? No. Shut up. You're dumb. And she was like, I don't know. Like, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. That doesn't make any sense. No. Like, oh, did you recently lose something? Like, no. But she brought up, she's like, oh, what about my cousin's husband had, we were close for a long time and he had committed suicide, I think the year before. So it's like interesting. She's like, he's making sure that you're, watching over everybody. And it's like, huh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, she said something along the lines of like, hey, I don't want to take up anybody's time. I just want to make sure everyone's okay. Which is like, and she said something that was very Petey, like very
specific to him.
Yes.
So I was like, all right. Because I mean, I was giving her nothing. I said nothing. I wasn't looking at anybody, doing anything, like, because I understand how cold. I'm like, I get that there are certain involuntary things, but
and they were also attempting to read some other people in the room, and like it was just kind of like a misfire, so to speak. Like it wasn't. They were trying to make a connection, but it was off, and so we were all kind of like, yeah, okay. So when this happened, though, specifically,
it was
because she pointed directly at, it wasn't one of those like, oh, did somebody in here have a person who,
yeah, it was
hung
different.
themselves, it wasn't that. It was like, this person wants to tell you this thing. I mean, right,
my friend
right.
Matt. Oh yeah, Matt. Yeah, Matt says hi.
Yeah,
and
Edward.
He's talking about the the Mazda. Yes, Matt and his Mazda both say hi. It's like what?
Oh man. Yeah, I love the responses. What the fuck? No, you're dumb. Because I get that. Like, as much as I believe in the paranormal world and metaphysical gifts, I tend to kind of lean in that direction when I'm first approached. Because, like you said, a lot of people are usually out to make money and guessing. And so it kind of screws it up for those that really, truly do have those gifts. And it reminded me of one experience where I had been with a psychic, and at first I thought it was like BS. And she's, I don't like to connect to people's things and the energy of things. So when she's like, here, I'm going to do a tarot reading for you, and goes to hand me her cards, she's like, shuffle these. And I'm like, I'm not touching your cards. And she's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I'm not touching your cards. I'm not going to connect with, no, I don't want to do that. And I was like, so if that's the only way we're doing this, no, thank you. And she just kind of looks at me for a moment. And she's like eyeing me up and down. And I'm thinking, okay, well, the reading's done, right? Because I've kind of just taken that out. And so she puts the cards away and she goes, okay, then we're doing this. And I'm like, hold on, what? what are we doing? And she proceeds to just read me so hard in a way that is very uncomfortable and slightly offensive, because I'm like, you don't know me. Apparently you do, but it was a little uncomfortable. And I had been wearing a really thick hoodie, and I had this like little necklace on underneath that you couldn't see through the hoodie. You couldn't see the chain. You couldn't see the necklace. And at some point she looks at me and she points at my chest and she's like, and that necklace that you're wearing, she's like, that's your protection. You need to keep it on. She's like, and stop letting people touch it. And I'm like, what? She's like, you know what I'm talking about. Stop letting people touch your necklace. That's your protection. And you need to ground out. And I'm like, how rude. And she's like, I have more to say to you. And I was like, oh, look, her little timer went off. I was like, oh, time is up. And she turns it off and she's like, this part's on me. And then she keeps going.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
The realest reading I've ever had. And also the most I probably was the most defensive. Part of me wanted to be exactly like you, PJ, and just be like, what the fuck? You're dumb. Shut up.
You don't know.
You don't know me.
Well, it's like I hadn't lost anybody like close to me at that point. Like, if I were to go now, and they were like, oh, there's, they'd be looking at me like, there's an older bald man in the corner. I'm like, oh, Dad. It's like, oh, yeah, you piece that together yourself, Einstein.
Now, my question to you is, you've talked about how you had that super visceral reaction to what you saw on the TV and you feel something's constantly watching you. Do you think that your reaction to that is because you have maybe some kind of internal subconscious memory of seeing something that triggered?
I think so, and I think it's connected to whoever was calling my name from outside my window. And again, it's been 40 years, and I can still hear that voice as clear as if it was happening right now.
So I have this theory. So I'm a scientist by day. I have my degree in biology and biotechnology. And something that, scientists often do when they're looking to study something is they will tag, an animal. So let's say a shark, seeing as we're in Massachusetts, we're going to the Cape next week, the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy will, tag great white sharks,
yes,
and monitor their migrating pattern and, look for behaviors and whatnot. I feel, so even though I don't think that we've had direct contact with extraterrestrials for a very long time, I do feel like they have ways of tagging certain people and watching them.
Oh yeah,
watching their migrating patterns.
No, it's not just that. It's, I buy it
So I think it's something that, happens at an early age too. Some people think that, oh, I'm 33 and I just got abducted by a UFO. I don't think it's necessarily that per se. I think it happens at a younger age.
Yeah, catch and release.
Yeah. Because because as a child, because they've learned that children, if you do it early enough, the child is not going to have any direct, grow up to have any direct memory of that. However, our bodies never forget. Our bodies don't forget trauma.
Well, you're subconscious. Yeah.
Exactly. So when you see those things, you hear those things, that visceral reaction that you have, it's because you've had some sort of contact.
Yeah, and I again, there's a lot that
I could also just be completely full of shit. Who's this crazy lady, talking?
No, but
why'd they give her a microphone?
There are a ton of cases of people who are like, oh, I'm my knee hurts or my leg hurts, whatever, they get x-rayed or MRIs and they find like these tiny little things that the only like these small metallic pieces that are in, and it's like they're the only explanation is they're like
Aliens.
some kind of tracking chip. And it's like, but I mean, again, I watch all this stuff. I do, a ton of research. I've seen all the ancient alien stuff.
I was going to say Ancient Aliens is something that is constantly playing in this house in some capacity.
I listen to it like a podcast. Like I'll play the video, but I'll listen to it like a podcast. And, it's
listening to some kind of.
That's David Childress. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff. There's a lot of unexplained things. And, it's funny because I'll see some of this stuff in other movies. Like, when we watched Moonfall, I was like, oh, well, there's this and this. And then like 5 minutes later, John Bradley is like, oh, yeah. And he says the exact same thing I was just saying. Or we watched Alien versus Predator the other day, and they were in Teotihuacan, Mexico. And it's like, oh, that's one of those sites that they're always talking about on Ancient Aliens. So it's fun for me, but also like I think there's a reason that I gravitate towards that over other things, because I am also science-minded and rationality and logic, and it's like, okay, how can this be explained? And there are certain things it's like I don't know.
So what do you think is more likely, that you're being watched by aliens or that there's a spirit watching you?
What if they're both?
Well, I think the thing is, it's kind of, I think it's less extraterrestrial than extra dimensional. Like there are different planes of, I've always subscribed to the fact that, we know in physics that energy can be neither created nor destroyed. It merely changes forms. Your brain is essentially just a series of electrical impulses. That's who you are. When you die, that energy has to go somewhere. That energy lingers. It's no longer contained. What does it do? Does it just dissipate and float off into the ether? Maybe. I mean, there are enough instances of, not just, mass sightings, but, individual sightings and individual things that happen all the time and have happened throughout history. Even if you're not religious, you can believe that there is something more that happens to you after you die.
Well, I mean, and science has, discovered and like, or at least there are theories that, there's a vibration to the universe. There's an energy to the universe. So what you're saying is 100%, plausible.
Yeah. I mean, there are specific things, like think about like symbiotic relationships. So, one of the things I learned over the last couple of years is that when cats purr, part of what they do it is
it's because they're full of bees.
It's because they're full of bees. That's part of it. No, they do it when they're happy and like they are. It's a specific vibration. Cats purr at the exact same frequency that bones heal. So when you're not feeling well, like so many people like, oh, I'm not feeling well. My cat sat on me and purred the whole time. Part of it is if you have a fever, they want your heat. But the other part is they're trying to heal you. Like if your cat meows at you, adult cats don't meow at other adult cats. They look at you as a baby and they're trying to communicate with you. So it's a weird thing, especially the way cats were domesticated. Same thing with how dogs were domesticated. Like how many times have you heard of, a dog that, gets left behind or gets lost or something, and like the family moves and then like a year and a half later the dog shows up like all scraggly at the new house. Like how would that dog have found that family?
Homeward bound?
Yeah, kind of that. I mean, like that's legit stuff. Like that happens. I mean, most of them are not voiced by Sally Field, but it's that I know
Sadly.
of. But there's a lot of that stuff that it's hard to explain. How many times have you seen an instance of these two twins were separated at birth and they married like the exact same woman with the exact same name, and they each had a kid on the same day, and like they each have the same job, and like when they run into each other on the street they're both wearing the same outfit. Like, that didn't happen once, it didn't happen 2 times, it's happened hundreds of times. Like, it's a weird like synergy that happens, like, and there's no way to explain that. Like, it's just a weird coincidence, but like there has to be an explanation. Just because we don't know what it is doesn't mean that, there isn't a reason for it.
Well, we are a vibration based planet or dimension, I guess, because the way we communicate is through vibration.
Yep.
Our primary is through vibration, but even animals communicate primarily through vibration, and like visual is secondary. And so it is interesting. I know some people do refer to the Earth's vibrations as like harmonics, and I feel like oftentimes so many different schools of thought get hung up on the semantics of things, but they're really all saying the same thing.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, again, going into like harmonics and stuff, I mean,
Mhm.
when you have the Buddhist singing bowls, like the tone that it's the Om tone, it's,
Mhm.
and that's supposedly the same vibration, the same frequency at which the earth vibrates. So like when you're doing that to ground yourself and meditate, you're literally getting in tune with the earth.
Literally grounding
You're
yourself.
literally grounding yourself. Yes.
That's one thing that I've been actually researching a lot lately, because I'm terrible, but I play the violin. I've been playing for a few years now, but I've been randomly playing at haunted places for the spirits, right? And my whole thing is, can you play at a specific key signature that means a specific thing and get some kind of response with that, right? Like if it's like G minor or something, if it's something that's like somber or something that's, that kind of feeling of tone, do you get that back from them? And I've just been having fun with that.
I think that's interesting, because there are things you can perceive, sounds, vibrations, and frequencies that you perceive without realizing that you perceive it. Like horror movies will use this technique all the time. For example, the movie Irreversible, there's a very specific scene involving Monica Bellucci, and underneath the music of the scene is this very low frequency that, for whatever reason, causes unease in humans. And they play that, and you're hearing it. You're not aware that you're hearing it. You're not aware that you're feeling it, but it's there, and it's adding to the atmosphere of what's about to happen in the film.
I always wondered about the like super low sound vibrations that cause disease, and part of me wonders if that's more of a science thing, that it's like an ingrained survival skill, because animals that make that low guttural sound tend to be predators. So we're kind of built into run. It's gonna eat us.
Yeah, I mean, and that makes sense. Like, there are, obviously predators that don't make sounds, sharks, for example, but, you're not apt to run into one on the street. But yeah, you're completely right. Like, they use it as a warning sound when they're scared, also when they're trying to be intimidating. Cats, dogs, wolves, there are certain ones that aren't as scary, like the little weasels, and like, I don't know what rabbits do, but rabbits are prey animals. But I'm sure they have some kind of vocalization that they use to kind of attempt to ward off predators.
Yeah.
Oh,
To go along with what you were saying about the horror stuff, is that there are a lot of filmmakers that'll throw random songs that have a weird key signature, right? So it's not what you would normally listen to, and that misstep is what throws everything off, and then it's like, oh god, like where do I find my footing kind of
Yeah.
feeling, right? And then that's where the bad things come in, right? And then it's just like, oh, and you can anticipate it, right? They do that a lot in video games as well, for sure.
like discordant strings or discordant piano, where it's like, you think that there's a specific, key change, and all of a sudden it goes back to somewhere else. And it's like you're saying, it's to keep you off balance. So you can't kind of settle yourself and prepare for the frightening event that's about to happen.
Yes. And one other thing, it relates to UFOs, oddly enough, but with sound, right? I think it was an Ancient Aliens thing, maybe, that I watched, because I'm really big into that too. But sound vibration and the use of sound as a tool is something that that they talk about. They're like, well, we haven't begun to harness the power of vibration when it comes to music and everything, to use as a tool, as a functionality thing for travel, for whatever, right? It could be something that's a power that's, we're just not there yet, which I think is pretty interesting.
There are ancient accounts of different civilizations using sound to move some of their their megalithic structures, the Moai on Easter Island, or the the pyramids, that you find all over the place. Like, there are rocks in places that there's no reason, like those giant stone spheres that you find in the jungles of Central America, and it's like the nearest quarry is thousands of miles away. How would this 20-ton stone sphere, first of all, how'd they make a 20-ton stone sphere without, complex tools? And how would they get dozens of them just sitting here in this swamp, and the closest like granite quarry is 1,000 miles away?
You guys are talking about sound, and BJ, I know you play the violin to see if you can get responses, but I wonder, we're gonna, because it sounds like we've all kind of watched and listened to things, so we're gonna get a little weird. But I wonder, Catholicism and Christianity aside, a lot of cultures use sound to do healing when there's spiritual attacks. So like tribes and, a lot of chanting that you hear of in the Asian cultures will use song and chanting to kind of ward off negative energy. And part of me wonders if it's not so much, evil spirits don't like songs, but if it's the fact that we're counterbalancing the vibrations so they neutralize out. So taking this up vibration against this low vibration to neutralize it. So I wonder what would happen. And I might piss off people that want haunted places to say haunted, but I wonder what would happen if we went into a haunted location and started playing neutralizing sounds, neutralizing vibrational sounds. Would that clear a spot? Would it temporarily ground it? Like, what do you think would happen?
That's an interesting concept. I mean, you're definitely right. Like, there's a lot of that type of stuff, like you're saying, all kinds of cultures all over the world, cultures that never, 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, antediluvian, civilizations, where they all do some specific, like, it's specific to them, but it's very similar, like how a lot of cultures have a flood myth. There's very similar but unique ways of driving off or attracting the the spirits, or the entities, or the ancestors.
Well, and do you think that, because we all know that there are benevolent spirits out there and malevolent spirits, do you think that the two vibrate at different frequencies?
Oh yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like, whether you're trying to attract or deter someone. I mean, one of the most famous instances of, again, going back to movies, is the light and sound combination from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And I think part of that is not just that music can be universal, but music, when you break it down, is math. You're matching, because if you remember that specific scene, the tones that were played by the humans were of a higher pitch, and then the aliens responded in a much deeper tone. And what's interesting about that film, speaking about all the ancient aliens and stuff like that, is Dr. J. Allen Hynek is in that film, and he was the guy behind Project Blue Book, and he was also a consultant on that film, and it is supposedly based on some footage that he received, and they were during the Nixon administration, they were going to go public with it, and then afterwards several three-letter agencies came back to him and were like, no, we've decided that we're not going to make this public. But all of the events that occur in the end of that movie were based on this 8 minutes of film or so that he received. It's just weird that Spielberg would include somebody like that in his movie.
Yeah.
The ABC boys said, nah.
Probably a couple of organizations that don't have any specific affiliation.
So I guess my question is, if we are playing these tones to spirits, and we're trying to play them some high vibration stuff, maybe because we want to counteract some negative energy, what are we playing?
The sound bowls, right? The ohm.
I mean, that's one thing, but that's a lower tone. That's kind of like, that's for a specific meditation ritual, which is supposed to, put you into contact with, open your third eye and put you into that
with your higher self.
plane.
Yes.
The issue is, and it reminds me of my favorite Star Trek movie, Star Trek 4, Voyage Home.
Voyage Home.
What is Spock?
Are you guys best friends?
We probably should be.
When they're interpreting the sounds of this probe that's coming to Earth and just trashing everything, they realize that it's humpback whales, and Kirk's like, well, let's just play some whale sounds back at him. It's like, but we don't know what we're saying. Anything we respond would be meaningless because we don't know how to respond. And I think that might be the same thing. Like, it's like, okay, we want to play higher frequencies, but in what order? It's like, oh, I'm going to get down and I'm going to, like, if I were to sit at a piano and be like, all right, I'm going to play the 1812 overture. I have no clue how to do that. I'd be just hitting keys at random. Maybe I get 2 or 3 notes in every 100 tries. So it would be, I think, the same thing. Like, unless you had a specific sequence or a specific frequency, maybe it's just you have to get that one frequency and that opens up the communication, or maybe you have to get a specific series of tones in the right order. Because I mean, when you're dealing with this type of stuff, you don't want to get it wrong because you never know what's going to happen.
It's a language.
Well, people are vibrating, right?
Mhm.
We're already walking in vibrating at a frequency. So I wonder, for the people that are experiencing, that are more sensitive or experiencing things a little bit more strongly, do they perhaps have a similar frequency that they're vibrating at, that these things are reacting to, responding to? Or is it kind of just your vibration is calling out to, not calling out, but it vibrates out, and different things respond to that, just depending where you're vibrating out? I don't know. My brain's going to explode.
Well, I think what you're asking is, are certain people vibrating at a specific frequency that invites communication? And like, if you and I are vibrating at different frequencies and you're at one end and I'm at the other.
Yeah, you're at the end that aliens deal with, and I'm at the end that sees dead people.
Yes.
So
yes. Wait, you never mentioned that. We're going back to that.
But like, you have that ability, but again, maybe you're like, think about it like a TV. You're broadcasting a signal, but you don't receive a signal.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be able to vibrate at the same, and there are certainly people who can do that. Somebody like an Edgar Cayce or a Uri Geller, somebody like that. People who were using the what's the word? The remote viewing, things like that.
Mhm.
Like those people who were able to do that, like that's one specific way of, I mean, think about, to put it in terms that people might be familiar with, Stranger Things. That was a MK Ultra using remote viewing, using, you know, psychic children, like awakening that ability, you know. And somebody who did it really well was Roald Dahl with Matilda. The reason Matilda had all these powers is that she was so intelligent and she was able to, you know, concentrate and open up her psychokinesis. But once they skipped her ahead a couple grades and she was being challenged and learning, and you know, there was too much going on, she lost her ability to do that. So when you're using a kid, the kid's able to communicate and just kind of report back what they're seeing. However, depending on where you go, if something can see you back, now it's a two-way channel. Now you've opened up that connection. So again, you have to be very careful with that type of stuff because not everybody likes being spied on.
Now, Ashes, you see dead people?
I do, actually.
So remember when I asked who had paranormal experiences and you pointed at him?
Well, because he had a very like mine's not as interesting as his.
I mean, not many people see dead people that will admit it. So I'd say that's already interesting. Tell us more.
So I mean, it's been several different occasions throughout the years. So when I was younger, I want to say probably around like 12 years old, I went to an older friend's birthday party. It was her 16th birthday, and her parents had gotten her a tarot card reader there, and so we were all having our tarots read, and oh my god, we're so witchy, and we watched The Craft and everything was fantastic, right? And there were crystals there and it was so cool. But anyways, I remember the woman looking at me and she was like, "You have psychic abilities." She's like, "You just don't know it yet." And I remember that because I remember her pointing at me. Like she was looking at the card, she was looking at me, and she was just like, "You." And I've been told that several times throughout my life, but I haven't honed those abilities. I've always kind of heard things. Like, and I just thought, oh, it's just, it's just the voices in my head,
just crazy.
It's exactly like, oh, it's just one of my many personalities, just, trying to burst out. But it wasn't until after my dad passed that I heard him. I heard him. And at first I tried to I'm like, this is just my grief manifesting in, different ways and stuff. But then I saw him. And it's not like I saw him around the house. I was at fucking Walmart of all places. I saw him in Walmart.
Just getting some Cheez-Its, so out of your way.
Right? And he was there and then he wasn't, and it wasn't like, oh, I saw someone who kind of looked like him, or, oh, it's my mind playing tricks on me or something. I saw him, and I would be having conversations with my mom, who still lived in the place that he had passed in at the time. And she'd just be like, "Oh, your father," and oh, like he would be so disappointed in me for doing, this and that. And it's almost like I could hear him. And it wasn't necessarily like him talking right next to me, but it's like I felt I felt the words in some way. It was so it's not like somebody like sitting next to you whispering what to say, or sitting across from you saying,
You
"Hey,
hear it in your head.
tell your mother this." It's like it was literally a feeling. And
It's like an intuitive knowing.
Yeah. And again, like I just kind of brushed it off as like, oh, it's probably just, this is just how my grief has manifested, and I'm just trying to console my mother in this situation. Years later, we had a cat that passed away a couple of years ago. I see her all the time.
Yep.
She's here. Like she's here. Like I see her in passing. Like, and it's not just one of those like, oh, I thought I saw her out of the corner of my eye. It's like,
No, you see her.
she was there. She was there. I still hear her. I still feel her. And then his dad passed a couple of years ago. And
coming up on 2 years, yeah.
Yeah. And there are times when he's going through it. And I again, like, it's a feeling, like I feel his dad talk it, like, just the words are there, but they're not my words.
Oh, I've heard my dad a couple of times. Two that stand out. One was the first Thanksgiving, so it was less than a month after he passed, because he passed on October 29th, so right before Halloween. And actually, one of the things we said was like, "Oh, that's interesting because it's so close to the kind of like the thinning of the veil." So, but it was right before Thanksgiving, and she had made this gigantic mac and cheese, and I like looked at it and I heard him go, "Oh my god!" Like, "Oh, that was amazing! Like, that looks incredible." The other time was I worked on The Holdovers, and we went to the premiere, which was the day after his 1 year anniversary. We were sitting there, we were waiting for my name to come up in the credits, and it never did. And I heard him sitting next to me go, "Well, that's bullshit." Like 100%, like, yep. And she and I are actually like, I know everybody's like, "Oh my God, we're like so in tune. We're always finishing each other's sandwiches." Like, there was a time we were at Rock and Shock a few years ago, and we were talking about something like, like some sports thing. And I was like, "Oh yeah, like we'd be better off like just drawing a random number and having that guy come in." And we both said like the same random, like section G, seat 12, row 27. Like, they weren't numbers that were significant to us. They weren't anything that meant, it was just totally random, but we said the exact same thing at the exact same time. We said the same series of numbers, like exact phrase.
Maybe you both have alien embedded items in you.
Maybe. Or maybe his aliens liked me enough to be like, "Hey, you know what? We're going to put them two together."
Mm-hmm.
Because you're always saying that the aliens stepped in and helped usher on human evolution.
Yeah. I mean, again, like, since we've been together, I've not discovered, but really like learned exactly how autistic I am. Like, I took a test called RADS-R, and if you have a score of 65, you are not officially, because it's not like a medical test, but if you get a score of 65, then you're on the spectrum. My score was 155, so
Woo!
soared right by that.
You aced it.
Yeah, I fucking crushed that.
He's like,
Crushed it.
gold star.
Yes.
But I look at that as the next stage of human evolution, because if you think about ADHD, it's more of an ability to multitask. Like, I learned in college that I need to have some sort of background, like music or a movie or something going while I'm doing work. Like, when I was younger, I wrote 250 pages of a book I was working on while watching 3 seasons of Lost over 48 hours.
That's
Like,
talented.
straight through. And I retained everything from Lost, and I wrote a cohesive story. So I learned that in college. My mom's like, "You need to work, you have to work in complete silence." I said, "No, you need to work in complete silence. I need something to kind of distract myself. So instead of taking medication that suppresses that, I use music or movies or podcasts or something to kind of take that part of my brain that wants to like just, squirrel, that type of thing, so I can stay focused on what I'm doing." And I'm able to. I've tried watching 2 movies at once. I can't do that. I'm not that good.
Now, speaking of watching films, what's your favorite horror film?
So,
or top 3 if it's hard to choose.
All right, so top 3. So we were recently at a Hudson Valley Horror Fest, and there was a gentleman there who, here's the thing right here. He bought the Buffalo Bill House, and he rents it out as an Airbnb. Tom Savini built the oubliette in the basement. Built it about 4.5 feet deep, so you can take pictures and stuff. And she's like, "Oh, that's so cool. He loves Silence of the Lambs." I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, enough to the point where I know that the dog's real name is Darla. And the guy goes, "Do you want a job?" And then I'm like, "Well, it's an 8.5-hour commute one way, so probably not." But
you can throw lotion at people.
I could. I mean, if you look over my shoulder right here, that's the first time I've ever been able to do it. I have a Jaws poster. Like, you can't tell, but it's like very, very well done with my name on it. I have a glowing Jaws thing. I have a Jaws shrine over there where I have all my Jaws stuff. So Sounds of the Lamb, Jaws, and this was also at the con.
Oh, that's so cool.
1982, The Thing.
Mm-hmm.
Those three are probably my favorite, but the thing that got me into horror was Michael Jackson's Thriller video. And
Yes.
to kind of help take away like the scariness of it, we used to rent The Making of Thriller over and over and over and over. So you got to see Rick Baker's makeup and how they did different things. You got to see John Landis, like how he directed it, how they put the makeup on Michael. So because we were like 4 or 5 years old, my brother was 2 years younger than me, and it kind of took that, I don't want to say stigma, but like it kind of softened the blow where it's like, okay, I know that this isn't scary. Like when we watch Jaws, it's like, okay, I know the shark isn't eating Quint. You know, he's got like a pad under his back that you can kind of see, and he's just spitting up fake blood. And, you know, he's not really dead, obviously, but that was kind of like my gateway. So
Is watching the Thriller, Making of Thriller on repeat, do you think that also helps spark your interest in filmmaking?
I always wanted to like be in movies. I never thought about making movies until the last couple of years when it's like I started working in the industry, and like so many people were like, "Oh, I can do this, and I do that, and I directed this." And we went to a film festival in 2019, and it's like, holy shit, like this is what people are doing. Like, why can't I do that? But I went the route of let me learn about how to do things. There's a lot I need to learn. Like when we shot Sweet Dreams, it was just her and and I was running a camera for the first time. And like I always tell people, I will be known for my cinematography the way Sodom is known for its pottery. But what about you? What are your favorites?
Yeah, Ashes.
God, this is a loaded question.
I mean, there is one that we watch every year on Halloween that I know you like.
Well, I'm trying to condense it down to like a top 3. Okay, so I'm just gonna Rocky Horror Picture Show, number 1. Love that. It's the reason why I am who I am today. Death Becomes Her. I absolutely love that film. My heartbeat is horror comedy, dark comedy. And that film just has everything. Trick or Treat.
It's a fun one.
I love Sam. We watch it every Halloween. I think it's a fabulous anthology, and the way that everything kind of pieces together at the end is just perfection. And I'm not going to follow the rules. I'm going to say 4. Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead has,
there were no rules.
Yeah.
Shaun of the Dead has a special place in my heart. I love zombie films. I love the zombie genre of horror. I love the loss of self and everything. And I think that film is just chef's kiss perfection. Like just the amalgamation, all of the homages and stuff. I just love it.
So Shaun of the Dead, the first time she attempted to watch it was the day we met. How many times did we have to try and get through that movie? Was it like 6?
We're not having this conversation right now.
Oh, we had this conversation before. I'm just saying. But we did find out something interesting about Death Becomes Her the other day, about how Tom Woodruff Jr., who did a lot of special effects, won an Oscar for that movie, but he was also nominated for Alien 3, I think it was. It was I think it was Alien 3. He was nominated for 2 different movies. He won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects. And he was in alien suit in Alien versus Predator, like, and his dad was in the Monster Squad. Like, so there's like a family history of, acting and being, amazing special effects people.
So where can people find Throwdown Thursday and more about Magenta Manor?
So you can find Throwdown Thursday wherever fine podcasts are found. You can follow us on all the social medias. Just search for Throwdown Thursday podcast. You'll find us. Look for the pink-haired witch and the shark. And you found the right people. Magenta Manor Productions, you can go to magentamanorproductions.com and we'll have all of our social media there. You can also go to deadofwinterentertainment.com where you can find fabulous films, fierce, horrific films, and some very, very, very fantastic podcasts as well.
Our first movie is dropping to our streaming service, Dead of Winter Direct.
I love that, by the way.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. We can't take credit for that, the naming, but it's pretty fantastic. So that's where currently the Magenta Manor films are doing the festival circuit right now. However, our first film, which is his first film, Killing with Kindness, will be coming to the Dead of Winter Direct very soon.
Yes. We filmed that last year.
And you will more than likely be able to see Sweet Dreams on Dead of Winter Direct later on this year. Either later on this year or very beginning of next year.
Yes. It all depends on festival acceptances.
Exactly. So, and we're also in pre-production on our next project. So follow us on social media to find out what's going on.
Absolutely. And James is going to kill me for saying this, but I have to. Every time I see Direct, all I can think of, because I'm a total immature child, is Die Erect. So
I mean, that's one of my biggest problems with the Twilight movies. Like, how did Edward Cullen have an erection to have sex if he's dead and his heart doesn't beat?
Fair. All valid points.
I mean, and that's true for, it's like, ooh, Count Dracula, he's so seductive. Oh, look at that. He's got all the brides of Dracula. Yeah, and his dick don't work.
But they're walking and they're moving, so they've got to have some kind of blood flow going, because otherwise the muscles wouldn't work, right?
Maybe that's what they take the blood for.
Yeah. And so just through a small window are they able to have an erection, but shortly after feeding, which we can all relate, I'm sure.
Vampires, yeah. I mean, like, that's the best time for me to get one.
All right. Well, this has been an awesome episode, guys. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap it up? Which is hilarious because we're talking about erections.
No, I think this was a lot of fun. Like, anytime we get a chance to talk like horror, like, this was a great like stream of consciousness thing that just kind of like went off on aliens and erections and it's been
that needs to be a t-shirt. Aliens and erections.
Deadofwinter.com. Aliens and
Erect.
Nothing else. That's all we have.
Oh my gosh. This has been a fun conversation.
No, but definitely check us out. And definitely check out Dead of Winter.
Yay.
And we will definitely have you guys on at some point, because this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I feel like this conversation needs to be continued at another time.
Yes, please.
We're just going to put a pin in it for now, and we will.
So when last we met, we were talking about extraterrestrial erections. So let's pick up from there.
All the euphemisms in that one. All right, BJ, John.
Oh, I just wanted to say you guys are amazing. I feel like a really strong connection with you guys because there's so many things that I vibe with everything that you're saying, all of the things that you love. I love, like Shaun of the Dead. I made a short horror film that was like a zombie musical that kind of does that.
What was that? The Devoted Dead?
Devoted Dead. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Nice.
I'm going to need to. I love musicals and I love zombie shit, so I'm absolutely going to have to check that out.
Okay, I can send it to you.
It is hilarious
I
and
love it.
awesome.
Yeah.
Such a fun one.
So good.
What about you, John Thomas? Any final thoughts?
Nope, none for me.
All right. Well, I loved talking about aliens and erections with you both, and I really would love to pick this conversation up again on a part 2 and maybe 3, 4, 5, 6. John Thomas, do you want to bring us home?
I sure do. Thank you guys again for coming on the show. Like everybody has said, definitely a blast talking all kinds of fun stuff with you guys. And thank you for our listeners. To our listeners, I can't talk today. That's why I'm quiet. Thank you to our listeners for listening to this episode of 300 Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And I'm BJ Segura.
If you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 300podcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss one amazing conversation about aliens and erections like this one.
Also, don't forget to check out 300podcast.com, where you'll find all of our past and current season episodes, as well as guest information and all kinds of awesome merch.
Until next time.